When we look at maps, we're trained to read human history as if it were made of fixed borders. Thick lines dividing countries, capitals built from stone and marble, vast armies marching in perfect formation. Almost every image we associate with civilization belongs to a settled world. But hidden in the dusty pages of history is a power that breaks this pattern. A people whose name appears on maps, then vanishes, then appears again. A force that could change the fate of empires with a single arrow. A people who kept kings awake at night and made whole armies feel like they were chasing a mirage. The Scythians. They were the most feared and perhaps the least understood ghosts of the ancient world. They had no border gates, no tax offices, no law codes carved into stone. They were a storm moving across the steppe, impossible to catch, impossible to pin down. From the moment they galloped onto the great stage of empires, from Assyria to Persia, from Greece to Rome, their enemies kept asking the same question. Who are these people, and why can't we stop them? In this documentary, we won't just meet a war machine. We'll explore a culture that danced with the wind, an art that turned gold into flowing motion, and a steppe spirit that helped shape the world we live in today. If you're ready, mount up. We're riding the fastest horses in history, straight into the endless horizon of the steppe. To understand the Scythians, we first have to understand their home, the steppe itself. This is a landscape that shows no mercy. It begins with the stormy winds north of the Black Sea, stretches past the Caspian Sea, and runs all the way to the foothills of the Altai in Central Asia. A gigantic ocean not of water, but of grass and earth. When the Scythians appeared on this vast stage in the 9th century BCE, they brought a revolution with them. They were the first great power in human history to take the horse beyond a pack animal or a source of meat and turn it into a weapon of war, even a partner in life. Some historians call them the first empire of the steppe. But the borders of this empire weren't drawn by stone walls. They were defined by how far a horse could run. Their walls were the wind, their roads were hoofprints, and their palaces were roofed with the sky. Instead of trying to own the land, they chose to move with it. Settled societies said, "This is mine," and put up fences. The Scythians said, "Everywhere we can ride is ours," and pushed their horses toward the horizon. That philosophy made them almost impossible to conquer. You can surround a city, you can tear down a fortress, but you can't cut the wind with a sword. And the Scythians were the wind. What made the Scythians so deadly? The answer lies in a piece of technology that was, for its time, a marvel of engineering: the composite bow. Before this, most bows were carved from a single piece of wood. Their range and power were limited. The Scythian bow was something else entirely. A wooden core wrapped in layers of animal sinew and horn plates, bonded with carefully prepared organic glues. Just building one bow took months of skilled work. From a distance, it looked small, bent almost like the letter W. But that small frame stored enormous tension. A Scythian arrow could threaten Greek or Persian armor from distances where other archers were almost harmless. And yet the real secret wasn't just the bow. It was the rider who drew it. For Scythian children, learning to ride came almost before learning to walk. That wasn't poetic exaggeration, it was their reality. In their world, you either became one with the horse, or the steppe swallowed you. They could control their horses with their legs alone, leaving both hands free. No reins in their fists, no heavy saddles like we know today, just balance, instinct, and muscle memory. And then there was their most feared tactic, the feigned retreat. Their enemies would see them turning back and think, "They're running. They're afraid. Charge!" Discipline would break, formations would thin out, and the troops would rush forward. That was the moment the trap closed. Scythian horsemen would twist their bodies around in the saddle while their horses kept sprinting forward, and unleash a storm of arrows into the soldiers chasing them. The move that Roman writers later called the Parthian shot had been mastered long before by the Scythians. For their enemies, the most dangerous moment was not when the Scythians attacked, but when they pretended to flee. One of the most striking things about Scythian society compared to their contemporaries was their view of gender roles. In classical Greece, most women were confined to the house, shut out of public life. But on the steppe, survival was a total struggle. Everyone had to contribute, men, women, and children. Those famous Amazon warriors painted on Greek vases, fighting men on horseback with bows and spears, they probably weren't pure myth at all. They were Scythian women. Archaeological digs in kurgans, burial mounds in modern Ukraine and southern Russia, have turned that legend into hard evidence. In grave after grave, archaeologists found bodies buried with weapons, armor, and clear traces of battle wounds. For a long time, scholars assumed they must belong to male warriors or kings. DNA analysis revealed something astonishing. Many of them were women. In Scythian life, a woman wasn't just the guardian of the household. She could also be the guardian of the herd, the land, and the clan. She rode, she drew the bow, and when needed, she died shoulder to shoulder with men. For patriarchal Greek society, this was so shocking that they could only process it as myth, and so they called them Amazons. When the dust of battle settled, however, another Scythian appeared, quieter, more delicate, almost artist-like. Because they were nomads, they couldn't express themselves through huge palaces or monumental statues, so they poured their creativity into the things they could carry. The style we now call animal style is still enough to leave modern jewelers speechless. In Scythian hands, gold became frozen movement, a deer being taken down by a predator, an eagle's claws closing in on its victim. Belt buckles, sword hilts, horse harness decorations, clothing appliques, everything became a canvas for their art. These figures weren't just decoration. They were talismans, symbols meant to draw the strength and spirit of wild animals into the warriors who wore them. And they didn't only carve these images into metal. They carved them into their own skin. In the Pazyryk kurgans in the Altai Mountains, archaeologists found a Scythian noble preserved in ice, his skin still covered in vivid tattoos. Fantastical animal figures curled around his shoulders and arms. These tattoos were more than art. They were badges of identity, perhaps marking rank, clan, or even the number of enemies a warrior had defeated. For the Scythians, a tattooed body was the canvas of an honorable life. Their spiritual world was just as unusual as their way of war. The Greek historian Herodotus wrote with fascination about their funerals and purification rites. When a king died, they built enormous kurgans over wooden tomb chambers that looked like underground log houses. To keep the king from being alone in the next world, they buried him with his favorite horses, his most precious belongings, and sometimes even with servants sacrificed to accompany him. And then there were the famous steam bath rituals. They would set up a small tent, place red-hot stones inside, and sprinkle hemp seeds over them. Thick smoke and hot vapor would fill the space. Inside, warriors would sweat, shout, laugh, and enter a kind of shared trance. It was both cleansing and mystical, a way to reconnect with the spirit world, with their ancestors, and with the living force of nature. After the brutality of battle, they healed their souls in the heart of that smoke. One more tradition, perhaps the most disturbing to us today, still tells us a lot about how they thought. The custom of turning the skulls of their fiercest enemies into drinking cups. They would carefully cut the top of the skull, smooth it, and sometimes line the inside with gold. To modernize, it looks like pure barbarity. But for them, it was also a statement. My enemy was brave. His strength now lives in me. It was the raw, brutal face of respect for a worthy opponent. From the 3rd century BCE onward, the Scythians slowly faded from the historical record. New waves of Sarmatians, Goths, and later the Huns rolled across the steppe and absorbed them. They left behind no great stone buildings, no written books, no marble columns. But in many ways, their legacy turned out to be more enduring than stone. Something as simple as trousers was spread through the ancient world by the Scythians and other steppe peoples. They perfected the art of fighting on horseback. Today, from Central Asia to Anatolia, you can still see traces of their world in steppe traditions, in epic tales, in patterns woven into carpets and kilims. The steppe cultures represented later by Turks, Mongols, and Huns are all links in the same long chain that once included the Scythians. They were the story of people who refused to be locked behind walls, people who valued freedom more than safety. The Scythians were the first lords of the steppe, the lost shadows of time. If the tale of these mysterious ghost riders of history has captured your curiosity, throw another log on our fire by hitting the like button. In the next episode, we'll ride into the great wars these ghost warriors fought against the superpowers of their age. Ask why even the mighty Persian Empire could not truly stop them, and see how steppe tactics rewrote the rules of ancient warfare. Until then, keep your eyes on the horizon. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next ride.